Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Today I'm going to be answering a question that was posted on Twitter, not specifically to me, by the YouTube atheist Godless Cranium. He was responding to a tweet, and so I'm going to read first the tweet he was responding to, then his tweet. The tweet he was responding to was, "Take the following as foundational. God created the world, and you, his creation, has a purpose. Failure to serve that purpose is bad for you and contrary to him. No purpose in a purely material framework, I know, so it's very foreign. But if there's a creator, it makes sense." And then the tweet, which has the question in it, is, "I create a conscious AI for the purpose of cleaning my floors. It decides it would rather not be my slave and clean my floors. How is not serving its initial purpose, given to it by me, in any way bad for it? Contrary to me, I can go fudge myself." Note, he didn't say fudge in the original. Okay, so there's a quick caveat first, which is that all analogies to human creators are kind of fatally flawed from the beginning, because a human creator, generally speaking, has some sort of need for his creation, whereas God has no need for us. God doesn't need us in any way. We can't add to God. God doesn't benefit from us. And so the relationship is simply, there's no symmetry there in the way there is with a human creator, because a human creator is making something that's the same sort of thing as him. Whereas God, who is unconditional, is making conditional things. And so we have a very different nature from God. Okay, but that out of the way, there's still a lot you can learn from this, so we're going to go with it. Just important to remember that caveat. So, we can leave out of account that this floor robot is trying to just commit suicide, because that's, kind of obviously just bad for it. So if it's not trying to commit suicide, then it is trying to live as something other than a floor robot, if it isn't trying to live as a floor robot. So let's say it's trying to live as a cat. There's a cat in the house. I mean, it has no way of knowing what a cat is given the limitations of its sensors, but whatever. Trying to live as a cat. So it's going to do things like sleep an awful lot, eat cat food, and try to find laps to sit in and get petted. So this is going to have a number of problems, the first of which is that it's not doing any of the things that actually will make it happy. And the second of which is the things that it's doing it's not going to find happiness in. So just to show why living as a cat isn't good. Living as a cat, it's not programmed to sleep. It's continuously active. Or possibly it does have a timer that can go off for when it's supposed to clean. Either way, the problem is, by and large, its timer goes off, it's supposed to clean, and until its programming figures out that it's done cleaning, it's going to stay awake. So it's just going to sit there incredibly bored, not doing anything, as opposed to sleeping like a cat would. When it eats cat food, it is not programmed, it is not designed to be able to deal with, the wet stuff in the gravy and so on. It's going to gunk up its brushes, it's going to coat everything, which was not designed to, have all this sort of like wet, sticky stuff inside. And then it's going to, it's not going to be able to get this out either. It's going to be just bad for its vacuuming system, because it was never meant to handle this sort of thing. It's not going to have any of the relevant sensors for figuring out what a lap actually is, so it's not really going to find laps. And even if it did, nobody is going to want this robot in their lap, because it's, heavy, it's hard metal, hard plastic, something like that. It's going to be uncomfortable. They're going to push it off should it actually find a lap. They're not going to pet the thing, because instead of being a, furry, warm cat, the thing is cold, hard metal or plastic. Not that it would do it any good if it could, because it doesn't have the relevant pressure sensors on its back to feel itself being petted, so it's not like it could even tell if anyone was petting it anyway. So its life as a cat is a complete failure. Moreover, its life as a cleaning robot is also going to be providing various stimuli that are not going to be helpful to its attempt to live as a cat. It's, until such time as it gunks it up full of cat food, its dustbin is going to, my dustbin full sensor is going to be constantly going off, and no amount of trying to get petted is going to fill that aching void in its dustbin. It's going to have an is the floor here clean sensor, so that it can tell whether or not it's finished cleaning an area and should move on. That sensor is going to continuously be telling it, oh no, there's garbage here on the floor, there's dirt on the floor. But since it's not cleaning it, it's not going to, in fact, do anything useful to get rid of it. So it's going to have this aching feeling that something is wrong. So you can see why this is actually terrible for the robot. The robot is going to live a short and miserable life, because also eating cat food doesn't give it any energy, and its refusal to go charge at the electrical charging port, because it's a robot where it's supposed to go, is going to result in its batteries dying fairly quickly. Now, that answers the question, but the thing is, I know what the next objection is going to be, or what the first objection is going to be. Because generally, whenever you point this sort of thing out, people then suppose that the robot has additional capabilities. Oh, but that was too simple. It would have more of an abilities, and then it could do this. And the thing is, invariably what they do is they never connect this to it being a cleaning robot. They generally, for whatever the invention, they always tend to assume it's some sort of general purpose thing. And so this would be analogous to assuming that a human being is created with a nature to do absolutely everything. And our purpose is not a description of the nature we are given, but rather our purpose is a arbitrary subset of the nature that we are given that we're supposed to stick to. That's not true. The things that we're supposed to do, natural law morality, is all about fulfilling the entirety of our nature and not going outside of our nature, because outside of our nature, we don't function properly. So, the analogy will tend to be something like, to a fully functional robot capable of doing ballet and flying kites and beholding the beauty of paintings, but it's told only to clean floors. But no one would do this. Nobody makes that sort of robot to clean floors. We have floor cleaning robots currently. You can see them. The Roomba Corporation, for example, makes them, and I suppose they have competitors. These things are not capable of doing ballet and flying kites and doing paintings and so on. They have the sensors that are useful for their task. So if you're going to add another sensor, like say the thing has a camera to recognize the trash can so it can empty itself, okay, but the thing is it's going to use, probably a convolutional neural network. Right, so these are things, they're large matrices that you then feed data into, and then they sort of reduce it to some sort of like simple score. So like either a classification system or, a score or a binary, something like this. And so what it's going to have hooked up to the camera is something that has been trained on a large data set of what is a trash can and what is not a trash can. And then it's going to have, the images that come in off the camera are going to go into this neural network that has been trained on recognizing trash cans. Now bear in mind the way these things work is that the training is done. Basically this means twiddling the parameters in these large matrices, these collections of matrices. And then once you find something that behaves the way you want it, you stop twiddling those parameters in the various matrices, and this is freezing the thing so that it just continuously behaves in the same way as before. This is fairly analogous to us having eyes that are capable of seeing objects and so on, and then we stop. Once we've developed on this stuff, we stop being able to see radically new kinds of things. And moreover, this is also pretty directly analogous to like we can see shapes and we can see motion, so on. Like our brains are designed to evolved to develop in the way that picks these sorts of objects out. They're not our brains don't self-organize, train on the large training data we get as children in order to see different kinds of things than what human beings see. So if your goal is to see different sorts of things than what human beings see, you can't do it because our brains won't do it. This is the appeal of certain types of hallucinogenics, whereby people think they're actually seeing something that they're not, but they think they're having some sort of perception a human being can't have. That's why that sort of thing is popular, because of that limitation. It's a good example of it. So the floor cleaning robot would be able to, like, its consciousness would basically just be getting out of the neural network a classification of garbage or not garbage, or possibly it would have a score like 78% probable garbage, 93% probable garbage, 14% probable garbage can. In all cases, 14% probable garbage can. So even if you were to take a flight of fancy and say this thing somehow could indulge in painting, the only thing it could do as a painter would be to paint things, and it could give them titles like 13% likely garbage can, 29% likely garbage can, 83% likely garbage can, because the only thing it can tell looking at the world is whether, how likely something is to be a garbage can. That's all it can do with its data, because that was the nature given to it. It's the limitations intrinsic in what the thing actually is. And this is where you have to make, if you're going to try to push these sort of things, you have to make reasonable analogies. Like, nobody is going to produce a robot capable of doing absolutely everything, capable of doing ballet, of doing parkour, of, diving and swimming underwater, of doing paintings and making poetry, and then have this robot, like, be special purpose to only clean the floor. No one would ever do such a thing. Ever. Never. Not once. Not in the history of the world would anybody ever set about doing this sort of thing. So that's why you have to make these examples actually reasonable to the circumstance, because otherwise all you're doing is saying that God actually gave us, within the hypothetical of God existing here, that God actually gave us a nature to do absolutely anything, and then just gave some arbitrary restrictions on the things to do, which is both A, obviously false, and B, not what anybody who is talking about natural law morality is actually suggesting happened. So, and the two of those together are kind of important, because if you really think human beings have been given the nature to do absolutely everything, you're a moron. You just need to actually pay a little bit of attention to human beings. We clearly have not. And the fact that human beings are actually generally pretty unhappy, I mean, just look around, you'll find they're actually pretty unhappy. Especially any place where people are trying to have any arbitrary nature, they're even more miserably unhappy. Kind of, really makes that very clear. I mean, just look at, how many antidepressants are prescribed. Look at how many people are in therapy and so on. Like, this is not painting a picture of people who are extremely happy, content always. Which is what is being described. That if you're not following your nature, you're going to be discontent, you're going to be unhappy, you're going to feel that something is really wrong. So, I mean, there you go. Anyway, so this describes the question and, addresses the various sorts of objections that are inevitably going to be raised to the answer, that your objections have to be within the relevant framework of, if you're going to talk about a floor cleaning robot, you have to talk about a floor cleaning robot, not a general purpose robot. And so if you want to try to say that we have the nature to do everything, that we can be happy at absolutely everything, and that there's just some arbitrary limits on us, you've got a pretty big, uphill, steep battle to wage to show how human beings actually can be happy at doing everything. Because if they could, then they would never be unhappy, because they were doing something, and since they can be happy at it, they would be. So it's funny, because there are people who think that the existence of unhappiness disproves God. The existence of evil disproves God. And that's not true for the various reasons I've discussed elsewhere. You can find all over the place the answers to the problem of evil. But the existence of unhappiness does disprove the idea that you can be happy doing anything. Because if you could be happy doing anything, you would be, and there'd be no unhappiness. So, until next time, may you hit everything you aim at,